On today's episode of Locked On Suns, the loss to the Thunder on Sunday night may have just been 1 out of 82, but time is not on the Suns' side. Devin Booker is now hurt, and history would tell us that the Phoenix Suns may just be running out of time. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Coming at you Tuesday morning, a game day in Denver for the Phoenix Suns. Today's show is one of 5 that you can get into your feed every single week. We are free and available everywhere, including YouTube, so just hit that button. Get an episode in your feed every single Monday through Friday from now through the end of time. Become an everyday or get locked onto the Phoenix Suns all season right here with Locked On Suns. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. FanDuel.com/lockedon is where you'll visit to get started. All right, so I'm coming to you not long after I recorded Monday's episode, recapping the Suns-Thunder game. Could have done it late last night, that OKC recap episode, but I think you probably got a better show the way that I did it. So if you're seeing me on YouTube and I'm wearing the same exact things and the daylight looks roughly the same, you're not wrong. Your eyes are not lying to you. But I have 3 things coming off of that loss, starting with history, starting with a look into the history books. But the reason I bring that game up, the reason I bring the timing up, is to say that I'm not as surprised or shocked by that Thunder game as other people. And I guess as a result of not being as shocked, I'm not looking at it as a big change of direction for the season or some sort of inflection point personally. I think that game just reminded us of the Suns' weaknesses. And it might be frustrating that those weaknesses still exist, but the reality is what we saw 30 games into the season told us something. And while we maybe could have hoped that getting 60 games into the season would have changed it, that might have been far-fetched. And what I mean by all of this is to say that we know by now, right, with a lot of teams. This is not me saying the Suns have no chance. This is not me saying the Suns are cooked or that there's no possibility that they make a deep run here. But the reality is, I think the expectations for the season, given how the past 2 years, 3 years have ended for the Suns in the playoffs, the big moves that they made in February and June and all throughout the past calendar year, basically, in order to get the roster into the shape that it's in now and the win now position that it is in, it creates it's championship or bust. And I think we all know that. And so with that being the context, I think we know. I think we've known that this team is unlikely to get to the upper tier of contention. But now that we're this far into the season, history is just not on the Suns' side. It's not just how much evidence there is, right? That the Suns now, they are, I think, roughly 10th. I think they're 10th in offense and 13th in defense. They are obviously 7th in the standings, 35 and 26 overall, plus 2.7 point differential per game, which would be 6th in the conference and almost middle of the pack in the league. Just straight up, how many points are they getting? Are they outscoring their opponent by per night? Would put them in pretty average territory. And yeah, they're 11th in offense and 13th in defense, so 10th in net rating. All those indicators are fine, right? They all tell you a pretty similar story and a not so great story. And obviously the way this team has come out of the All-Star break has been incredibly disappointing. Lose to Dallas. Struggle way more than you should have against the Rockets. Survive against the Lakers. Lose against the Thunder. We'll see what happens against Denver. But it's not just that type of history where, teams tend to be top 10 in offense and defense in order to win titles, and teams that low in the standings don't typically do it. You could look at the 40-20 thing that people have been talking about with the Celtics and some of the other teams in the West. If you win 40 games before you lose 20, that's a good sign. The Suns are not even there yet for the win side of that and already blown by the 20 losses. But no, the other thing is the excuse or the reservation you might hold of, well, they just need time to gel. And I might even agree with you on that, right? That the injuries have just broken apart whatever chance they had to develop chemistry and kind of get this unorthodox roster to click. It hasn't been able to happen for long enough stretches to feel good. But okay, that's just the reality of the situation. Big threes or star-heavy, top-heavy rosters almost universally have performed better than this one. Okay? No matter what the context is, no matter who you're talking about, every single one that I could find has been better than this Suns team so far. Obviously, you have the Warriors of the 16-17 season when Durant gets there. They're 50-11 after 61 games. The worst I could find was Cleveland in 2014-15, and that might be the best comparison from a talent standpoint, right? I mean, Kevin Love is not as good as Chris Bosh, not as good as, I guess, probably you would say not as good as Ray Allen, although they're very, very different guys, so it's kind of apples to oranges there. But that Cleveland team was even 37-24, so still 2 games better than this Suns team. The Heat in 2010, 43-18 after 61 games. Those Celtics teams that I just referenced with Ray Allen and obviously Pierce and Garnett, 49-12 at the 61 game mark. And the Lakers might even be the best comparison with Pau Gasol because he actually came in the previous deadline, similar to how Durant did. They were 43-18 at the 61 game mark of the 08-09 season, the first full year with Pau. And of course, even the Durant, Kyrie, Harden Nets, they didn't get 61 games with those guys, but obviously 13-3 in the games that they did play together and had that incredible first round series against Boston. Maybe we're in a different era, right? Maybe parity is taking over the NBA and we're just in the early stages of that. And a title run like Denver's where the regular season is even less significant than we thought. And their defense finished 17th in the regular season, but built into the playoffs and allowed them to lock down when it mattered. Maybe that's going to be the norm. I guess that would say that that's pretty comparable to what the Suns' situation is shaping up to be. You know, Denver slow played the regular season, but that team had years of chemistry together, even if injuries stole some of those seasons from them. maybe 2019 Raptors, just in terms of the upheaval of the roster with the preseason trade for Kawhi and then the mid-season trade for Marc Gasol. But that team was like top 5 in offense and defense. The statistical indicators said they were dominant. They just kind of needed to click, and they did. This Suns team winning a title would really not have a parallel in recent NBA history. Even teams who are hastily assembled and top-heavy and not very deep win at a better pace than this team has. Even recent title teams that had some awkwardnesses about them, they won and dominated at a higher level than this team has. And the unfortunate part is, even coming off of that Thunder game, regardless of how much you panic, they're right back into the injury side of things again with this Booker ankle sprain. And that's where we will go next. How can the Suns survive without Booker? Forget winning a title. Just in the regular season, as he is set to miss the next week plus with that right ankle sprain, we'll dive into how they survive next. First, today's show brought to you by Betterhelp. Betterhelp is bringing the practical, easy, simple essentials of therapy straight to you. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out. So today, I want to tell you how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. This is not what is sending me to therapy. This is about what authenticity can mean, and I'm going to tell you about how I feel about the Bradley Beal trade, right? Let me say this. It's not so much if you think the Beal trade was good or bad. It's not about if he was the best player available or not. It's about the opportunity cost. What else could you have done last summer with the Chris Paul trade? And I have a feeling as we look back, we may feel like there were smaller moves that would have created a little more of a sensical roster. That's how I feel. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team or the Bradley Beal trade, and it's important to get those things off your chest every once in a while. So again, low stakes, simply communication, opening up, thinking, being introspective. BetterHelp is there for you. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. To try it out, visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA for 10% off your first month. Keeping it rolling, let's talk about surviving without Devin Booker. For updates on Devin Booker, game day observations like tonight as the Suns take on the Nuggets, pre-game keys, halftime takeaways, post-game takeaways, and more. Sign up for the Locked On Suns Insider community. You can also respond directly to me, participate in mailbags exclusive for Locked On Suns Insiders. Get all the content that doesn't make the podcast, that doesn't make my Twitter, that is just straight to the most diehard fans, the Locked On Suns Insiders. Visit the link in the show description down below or go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns to sign up. Shams Charania reported Monday that the Suns are likely to be without Booker for the next 7 to 10 days. But that didn't sound exact, right? I mean, obviously that's a pretty big window in the first place, 7 to 10 days. But on top of that, it sounded like it could stretch beyond that. It's odd a little bit, and I sent this out when the news came down to the insiders that I was just talking to you about. I texted out that it's odd to hear Frank Vogel kind of express optimism that it wasn't too severe and then still have it end up being, maybe 2 weeks that he's missing. If it were to be 10 days from today and he's already missed 2 days, little strange. And they are going on the road around that time. So you're facing down the always difficult idea of, okay, when do you bring him back in a road trip and everything else? But here we are. Those are the facts of the situation. The other facts of the situation are that the Suns have been outscored by 2 points per 100 possessions, basically. 2 points per 100 possessions, basically, with Booker off the court over the course of this season. So that includes minutes with Durant and Beal together, or whatever combination you want. When Booker has not been on the court, the Suns have been outscored. That's the bottom line. At the same time, the Suns' remaining schedule has a 58% win percentage, meaning that they are really facing a tough stretch in the season. Of course, that's pretty obvious. So, okay, when you look at what the Suns have struggled with, what has doomed them when Booker has been off the court, it has been the turnovers on the offensive end. As we saw last night against the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? 20-plus turnover game. Unacceptable, just embarrassing. And that's been a running theme all year. The Suns just cannot take care of the ball. They cannot execute and run a real offense whenever Booker is not out there to do that for them. So, Beal is not a natural playmaker. I think we've learned that, right? Even when he's playing with Booker, when he's playing with bench units, no matter what the context is, it's not that Beal can't make a simple pass or that he doesn't read the floor well. I think he does all those things. He obviously can kind of create, people like to say create an advantage, right? Like he can beat his man downhill and kind of ignite some ball movement, kick it to the corner, and now the defense is rotating, and the ball movement creates a good shot for a shooter or a cutter or a driver, whatever the case may be. He can do that. But I think he's very one-track minded. He can be a little bit lazy. So he can't be the only solution. You cannot say, okay, Booker is out for 10 days. Beal is going to just do what Book does. No. I don't think that's really going to work. So instead, I think you should really lean into Royce O'Neal. I mean, just say, in these situations, Royce is going to be our point guard. He's going to be our primary initiator. Maybe you say when Beal is off the court, anytime Beal is off the court and Royce is on, Royce has the ball. Whatever the case is, certain types of lineups, certain moments of the game, inbounds versus off of a rebound, whatever the case is. Take advantage of how solid O'Neal has clicked into place as a passer, as an initiator. And I think that can start to solve the problems. I think they've done a better job of playing through Nurkic lately, so I wouldn't say to overdo it with that. There's limitations there. But definitely more O'Neal would go a long way. The other thing I would say here from a lineup standpoint and a role and responsibility standpoint is that I might start. No, I would. I'm not. What am I saying? Might. It's one of the things that they need to do. So I want them to do it. I think they should do it. I'm being decisive here. Don't worry. Start Eric Gordon over Grayson Allen. So to me, that starting lineup becomes Beal, Gordon, O'Neal, Durant, Nurkic. And that might sound crazy, right? Grayson Allen has been one of the best shooters in the NBA. He has had some huge nights as a shooter, as an assist guy. He helps with the pace at times. He's been the guy that gets matchups defensively against some of the best players on the opposing team. But if you look at the statistics, just from a straight-up on-off standpoint, when Grayson Allen has been out there this season, the Suns have gotten outscored. The Suns have been much worse defensively. So they have gotten outscored by more when Grayson is out there than when he is on the bench. Their defense has been worse when he plays. And that does track. I mean, Grayson, he fights, he executes, but at the end of the day, he's small in terms of height. He's small in terms of, size, bulk and strength and things like that. And Eric Gordon is far from perfect, but he is at least a little bit, he has length, he's about the same height, and he has the heft. So, yes, that leaves Beal needing to guard kind of the pick and roll initiator, fight through screens types for right now. But I think it balances things out a little bit better, because the one thing you can lean into, just like we saw early in the season when Booker had to miss an extended stretch, is that it gives you the opportunity to put defensive lineups out there more often and try to win the minutes when maybe only one of Durant or Beal is out there. Win those minutes with your defense rather than your offense. And so I think that having a little bit more balance in the starting lineup allows you to get there a little bit more easily. So you have a little bit of a higher defensive floor with those starters. You then have Allen can come in to supplement the offense at other stretches of the game, but you still have, to me, really put more defensive lineups out there for the Suns. That means just play Josh Okogie more. Has really been, any of the lineups you try to look at from an on-off standpoint, the best defensive lineups, no matter the context, have been lineups where Okogie is in there this season. And so that's what it's really going to mean for the Suns. So maybe that allows you to have Grayson and, let's say one of Gordon or O'Neal stays on the court with the bench, and then Okogie, and you at least, again, get more balance. It's kind of something we saw early in the season when Beal was out too, right? Where keeping enough of both things on the court at all times was a balancing act that was difficult. And I think that lineup change, playing Okogie more, the identity shifts for the team, the way they might need to win shifts, but it helps you make up for Booker without just replacing Booker, because you can't. As I said, as a playmaker, even as a scorer, Beal is not as good as Booker. So you cannot just have it be 1-for-1. And obviously, Allen and Gordon, none of those guys you're not getting to Devin Booker, an all-NBA caliber, all-star caliber player. But this is the pathway. Is there a pathway for Bol Bol? Is it time to trust Bol Bol? Really? Coming off of a game where he has a great week out of the break and then only plays 7 minutes. What's the deal? Is it reliable heading into the playoffs? Vibe check on Mr. Bol coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official Sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network and America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Right now, as the NBA season comes to a close and the stretch run is in full force, bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, sometimes thrown out there by FanDuel partners around the media or the partnerships that they have. Get in on somebody that might be an expert, and much, much more, including money lines, game total point over-unders. Those are some of my favorites to bet, because sometimes with the NBA, it's like you just see the two teams and the trends that they've been on, and you're like, no, that game's just going to be high scoring. They're both rested. It's two high scoring offensive teams, etc. And there you go. All of that and more at FanDuel.com/LockedOn, where you can shoot your shot all NBA season long. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Keeping it rolling for one last segment. Don't forget the Suns play the Nuggets tonight at, what time are we playing at? 6:30? Is that when tip-off is going to be? That is correct. No, 8 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Mountain. Catch every pitch. Every pitch. Every basket of the hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Suns and hear John Bloom, Tim Kempton, and the local radio broadcast over on SiriusXM. The Suns play the Nuggets. Catch it on the SXM app by searching Suns. All right. Bol Bol. Where are we? What's the deal? I have an insane stat, actually, just to start with Bol Bol. Right? It feels like whether it was the 25-plus point game the other night in the loss to the Rockets or any number of other, the crowd erupts and it's all we can talk about when it goes well. The stat, though, to set the tone for this segment is 23. That is how many games Bol Bol has played this season. Does that feel possible? It feels like he's played 50 games to me. But it's only 23, and it's only 252 minutes. A few other things that might be reality checks with Bol, despite his progress. As a player overall, I think you would have to say, I didn't watch the Magic on a night-to-night basis last year, but considering the fact that they dwindled his minutes as the season went along rather than this year where his minutes have gone up as the season went along, and then they cut him when they did not need to, tells me this is certainly his most impactful, promising stretch of his NBA career. In spite of that, the reality check is the Suns' offense has been 4.2 points worse per 100 possessions with Bol on the court, despite those promising flashes, despite the fact that he is playing with his head screwed on straight for the first time as a pro and making a real impact in a variety of areas. On the offensive end, the Suns have not been able to score well at all when he is on the court. Now, of course, there's reasons for that, right? He is coming off the bench, so his minutes with all three of the big three have been very, very few and far between, meaning he's playing with Josh Okogie and Drew Eubanks and some of the limited offensive players the Suns have on the roster. But the other reality check is he's only shooting 30% from deep. Did you realize that? I don't think I necessarily did. And he's been hesitant lately, in a few different situations that have been frustrating to see. And I think those obviously go hand in hand, right? Again, in that 25-point game, he's 2 of 3 from deep. But since then, 1 of 4, 0 of 2, 1 of 5, 0 of 1. And just some games where he overpasses, overthinks it, gets in his head, and he has to be aggressive when the flow of the offense arrives at him, if that makes sense, right? If it's good ball movement, and all of a sudden it's Bol Bol catching it in the corner open, that's his shot now. And it has to go up, or he catches it around the basket. That has to be a dunk, right? Like, you have to do what you're good at in order to be effective in any sport, but in the NBA specifically, when it's 5 guys kind of combining their powers to be greater than the sum of their parts. So that's the continued work that is in front of him. I think you would have to say, though, the main improvements for him have been pretty clear and substantial as well. Processing. Right? Like, the first few times we saw him take the court, he looked lost. It looked hopeless, frankly. Like, did the Suns... I was completely wrong on this guy. I'll own that. But early on, I looked right because it just felt like the Suns wasted their roster spot on him. It felt like just a lost cause, right? But he's making the right pass. He's making the right decision. The pass versus shoot stuff, and as much as it's fluctuated a little lately, that's just really a couple of games, and on the whole, it's been better. His offensive rebounding has improved by leaps and bounds. He's doubled his offensive rebounding rate, which is just the percentage of shots that the Suns miss that he's gobbling up. It's doubled from his Magic season last year. And then obviously just consistency, right? And especially I think around the rim scoring, consistency in that capacity has been really big. That's driven his overall efficiency being high. He's one of these guys that because he didn't play with a lot of physicality or any of that stuff, he would often have a pretty low 2-point percentage, and or when he attempted shots right around the basket, he would make them, but he would avoid them or hesitate on those and just not use that to his advantage, not really make it a strength. But still, okay, so offense has been a little worse when he's out there. 3-point shooting hasn't really been consistent. On the other side, he's made improvements in those categories. The other part is defensively, you look at some of the deeper stats, and I do share some of these with the Locked On Suns insiders, so I will be sharing that screenshot from the B-Ball Index, which is a subscription service that I have access to that has some grades for more specific kind of skill sets. And in terms of, they have a stat that's rim points saved per 75 possessions. Basically just add up all the blocks and contests and opponent field goal percentage, all based on Bol being around those plays. And he's in the 95th percentile in terms of rim points saved per 75 possessions. He's positive in a lot of the advanced stats just in terms of impact. And so I think it's been positive more than negative. And again, only 23 games in. So assuming he gets consistent minutes, even though maybe sometimes it'll only be 8 or 10 like it was against the Thunder, I would expect it to continue to get better. You know, maybe the 3-point percentage ticks up even more and the consistency develops and they're able to string some lineups together to put him in a better position to succeed. I think that'll all be true. I think he will get minutes in the playoffs. But I think because of his frame, because of his unique skill set, he's going to be one of those players who is probably always somewhat matchup dependent. Right? Gary Payton with the Warriors. Mitchell Robinson with the Knicks. Those guys are more proven, probably better than Bol, you would say. But there are guys like this on good teams who in certain games, in certain series in the playoffs, may only get 10 to 20 minutes, but in others get 20 to 30. Maybe for Bol, that's some series he's getting 0 or 6 minutes. In other series, maybe he's getting 20. You know, like if they play the Wolves, I could see Bol playing a lot. You know, but obviously the Thunder playing as small and athletically as they do, it can exploit him. At the end of the day, I think still the Suns' rotation locks are the big three: Nurkic, Grayson, Gordon, Royce. And that's it. I think that's the only 7 guys who I expect will get minutes no matter what the matchup, no matter what the context, every night in the postseason. That won't happen for Bol or Okogie or Thaddeus Young or whatever, but he's certainly on the list of candidates. He's going to be part of game plans, and there's a lot of ways where he can make an impact, be effective, and he's played up to a level to at least prove to Frank Vogel and the coaching staff, I am here, I am capable, and I'm much better than I ever used to be. That'll wrap us up for the day. Coming back at you Tuesday night with Brandon Duenas recapping the Suns-Nuggets game. Late night, 8 p.m. tip. Be back right here as soon as that buzzer sounds for all of your post-game reactions. I will talk to you then.